Welcome along to the show. This is Graves on Gridiron. I am your host, Richard Graves. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the man to my left, a familiar face, Coach Jeff Reinebold. You've been here all week like the rest of us in Las Vegas. Are you ready for Super Bowl 58?
I am ready, and I'm ready for a little warmer weather back in Hawaii because it's a brutal reminder that it is February all over the world except for back home in the islands. Richard, this is an incredible sight, this whole thing. We've done probably 10 or 12 of these together, and it never gets old. It never changes, no matter what city they put it in. It's a spectacle, and it's even more of a spectacle here in Vegas.
Let's talk a little bit about the stadium. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it behind me. A brand new state-of-the-art facility, 65,000 all-seater. It is a stunning venue befitting of such an occasion.
Yeah, and the Raiders did a great job when they came in here and they built this. Mark Davis, unlike a lot of owners, he consulted the football people on the construction of the stadium and their practice facility. Their practice facility, which is part of the stadium, is maybe one of the nicest I've ever seen. And you know, credit to the Raiders. You know, they've been a transient club. They've been wandering around in the
Yes,
desert for a lot of years, but they finally, I think, have found a true home here in Vegas.
And they're very proud of that facility. I've spoken to the organising committee, the Super Bowl host committee this week, spoken to a good friend of yours and mine, now part of the Raiders coaching staff, Rob Ryan. And they feel that they finally got a home, and the only thing that's missing is the Raiders being in a Super Bowl. And as proud as they are of hosting it this weekend, they actually want it to be their team playing on the big game.
Well, you know, if you're a Raider fan, you got to take some pride in what they were able to do once Antonio Pierce took the job. He really turned that thing around. They beat the Chiefs. They beat good football teams down the stretch. And, you know, he finished with a winning record. I think it was a great move by Mark Davis to give him the job full time. He's a LA kid from Compton, grew up a Raider fan, and he has very, very deep ties to the organization.
Okay, let's turn our attention to the game itself. Kickoff, 3:30 local time here in Vegas, around 11:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow night. It will be a late one for UK football fans, but it is surely going to be worth the wait. Two of the best teams in the NFL right now. One team looking to create a little bit of history by becoming the first to go back-to-back in the Super Bowl for over 2 decades. That team is the Kansas City Chiefs. The other team, a storied franchise, the San Francisco 49ers. They've got 5 Lombardi Trophies, Jeff, in their cabinet, but they haven't won one in 29 years.
Yeah, I think all the pressure really is on the San Francisco 49ers, and it starts with head coach Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. He is the son of Mike Shanahan, and Mike won multiple Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos. He needs one to cement his legacy as one of the great coaches in the game. He's been here before and hasn't been able to get it done, both as an assistant and as a head coach. And I think this is really, with his roster, they are stacked top to bottom. This is the year, if you're a 49er fan, where you expect to walk out of here as world champions.
Well, let's start this conversation then, this preview, by talking about the battle of the 2 head coaches. We'll start with Kyle Shanahan because you bring him up. The narrative all week long is that Kyle Shanahan might have an issue winning the big game. Why is that, you ask? Well, go back to Super Bowl 51. He was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. They were leading by 28 points to 3 midway through the 3rd quarter against the New England Patriots. Not only did they blow that lead, they lost in overtime. Move it forward another 3 years, Super Bowl 54. Kyle Shanahan's now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. They enter the 4th quarter against these Kansas City Chiefs, leading by double digits. Again, they lost that lead. They lost the game ultimately by 11 points. So is there a mental block here that rests and increases the pressure on Kyle Shanahan and these 49ers?
Well, I think these are 2 of the best coaches in the National Football League, bar none. And I think that we have an unreal expectation sometimes as fans that you're going to be able to, you know, close the deal. And for Kyle, it's been really, really difficult because he has been here before. He has not gotten it done. But the reality of it is, in our business, as you know, professional football coaches, you're judged on what you do. Much like the quarterbacks, you're judged on what you do in the postseason. Andy Reid, multiple Super Bowl winner. Kyle Shanahan, been here, hasn't gotten it done. And again, I think it's going to be interesting to see how he coaches this game, because the criticism that he's taken, Richard, has been so much about not his play calling or his play design or any of that, or how he prepares his team, but what he does on game day. Yeah. They feel that his critics say he tightens up on game day. And, you know, I think it's critical for them that they start the game fast.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about Andy Reid, the head coach of the Chiefs as well, because the narrative now is that if he wins tomorrow, it'll be his third Super Bowl success as a head coach. I've heard some people on Radio Row this week speculate he might call it a day in his career if that were to happen. But prior to joining the Chiefs, the accusations that were thrown towards Kyle Shanahan were being directed at Andy Reid because he enjoyed a lot of success with the Philadelphia Eagles, but couldn't win a Super Bowl.
And that's just like I said, that's just the the neighborhood we live in,
Yeah.
and as professional football coaches. I tell you what, I would be shocked if Andy Reid would walk away. He is a football guy. He is a guy that's a football lifer. He loves everything about the game. He loves to watch the film. He loves to spend the time in the office and all the prep time that it takes. I think that also this is big for the for the Kansas City Chief franchise, because in my opinion, you have to win 3 in a 6-year span to be considered a dynasty. And you talk about the great dynasties of our time, the Cowboys, the Steelers, and you go through the Patriots. Those were true dynasties. Kansas City has been a great football team for 6 years. Now, if they can close the deal in this one, that's their 3rd and 6. And I think that solidifies their status as a dynasty team.
In terms of the head coaches, who do you give the edge to?
I think you got to give the edge to Andy Reid. And one of the reasons, Richard, we study Andy Reid, and one of the things you see is that he is almost unbeatable coming out of a bye. And that's much what the Super Bowl week is like. You have a week of preparation at home, then you come to the venue and you play the game. So again, if you look at that history alone, I would give the edge to Andy Reid.
Okay, don't go away. When we come back, we'll be discussing the battle of the two quarterbacks, Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy against Patrick Mahomes, 2-time Super Bowl and NFL MVP. We'll be back in a few seconds. Welcome back to your Super Bowl 58 preview show here on Graves on Gridiron. I've got Coach Jeff Reinebold alongside me. You know the biggest talking point all week long around this city, Jeff, is can Brock Purdy win the big game? It's a remarkable story. 2 years ago, taken with the very last pick in the NFL draft, nicknamed Mr. Irrelevant because of it. Due to injuries, he becomes a starter in the back end of last season, and that curve has just continued pointing upwards, that arrow, ever since. He's got a 23-6 record in all games he's played, and yet he now goes up against Patrick Showtime Mahomes, the man with a proven record, the man that's got it done on the big stage. 2-time NFL MVP, 2-time Super Bowl MVP, looking to guide this Kansas City Chiefs team into the echelons of being a dynasty. So when we start with Brock Purdy, he was a bit shaky in the 2 playoff games that they've played this season. Some have argued that the 49ers are lucky to be here, but crucially, he found a way to get the job done on both occasions.
Well, let's discuss this, because I think there's a lot of things that we got to unpack about Brock Purdy. Number one, Brock Purdy does not look the part. He's a 6'1", 200-pound guy that doesn't have that big arm, doesn't have the stature that you look for in a quarterback. The reason he was drafted so late was the fact that he doesn't look the part. He's not an elite athlete, but he is a winner. When you talk to the people at Iowa State, where he played his college football, they say he completely turned the program around. Iowa State is not an easy place to win. The Chiefs took a flyer on him. The 49ers took a flyer on him with the last pick in the draft, and he's paid off in huge dividends. Look at his numbers. When you look at his numbers, you say elite quarterback. When you think about where he was drafted and how tall he is and how strong his arm is and all of those things, you say, he's just a guy. But, I think he suffered in some ways from a thing we call entry bias. And where you are drafted, or if you are drafted, is so important in terms of how the media
You get tagged with a narrative, don't you?
Absolutely. Once you get a tag on you, Richard, it's extremely hard to get it off. He has to win this game to get that narrative changed. I talked to Jesse Sapolo, who longtime San Francisco 49 offensive lineman, who snapped the ball to the likes of Steve Young and Joe Montana. And he likens Purdy very much to Joe Montana. Not the biggest guy, not the most athletic guy, not the biggest arm, but incredibly good at accuracy and timing, which are the 2 most important quarterback characteristics.
And that has been the surprise in the 2 postseason games we've seen from the 49ers. Through the regular season, Brock Purdy's accuracy was second to none. In the opening halves of both games, he's just been a little bit off. Why is that? Is it the occasion? Do you think that he's aware of the weight of expectation? He's only a second-year quarterback after all. He would be human if that was the case.
Well, I think it's a combination of all those things. And, the thing that I think with the 49ers and with Brock Purdy in particular, he can't afford to start slow. He can't afford to have a bad first half like he's had against the Packers and against the Lions, because the Kansas City Chiefs defense is better than either of those two defenses. And he needs to gain some confidence, start early, get Debo involved, get Kittle involved, spread the ball around with McCaffrey. He has weapons at his disposal, and he needs to be able to use them. And I think that San Francisco should go up tempo early and try and attack the Chiefs, not come out and play passive against that Chief blitzing defense.
For our listeners on Graves on Gridiron, you'll have heard Coach Rob Ryan say yesterday that he feels Brock Purdy's best friend coming into this game is the run game. CMC, the Offensive Player of the Year, named this week by the NFL, because if he gets the run game going, that opens up the play-action pass option, and that keeps the Kansas City Chiefs defense off balance.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a world-class athlete with incredible athletic genetics. His mother and father were both professional athletes. He's got a grandfather that was an Olympic champion. This kid is a rare blend of speed, strength, elusiveness, and incredible competitive desire. When you watch him play, he is everything that you would want a running back to be. We always talk about how running backs are an undervalued position in the National Football League now. Not in San Francisco, because he can beat you a number of ways.
Let's flip it then. Talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the defending Super Bowl champions, led by Patrick Mahomes, the face of the NFL. It has not been the season you would expect traditionally from a Chiefs offense. And yet, despite the naysayers, despite the doubters, not only did they get into the postseason, but they found their way back to the big dance. And Patrick Mahomes, whichever way you dress it up, is an X factor. He's a difference maker.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Andy say this week, Coach Reed say this week, that he feels that the struggles that they went through, and I mean they went through some struggles. This is a Chiefs team that a lot of the season couldn't put 3 touchdowns on the board in a game, and that's unusual. This is a quarterback that has his first year in the league as a starter threw 50 touchdown passes. Well, that's not the Chiefs' offense right now. And they've grown and learned how to win other ways, which I think is really crucial when you go into a game like this, because you're going to need to win games, and sometimes the biggest game, ugly. They may not score 28 points, but I think this is a team that knows how to win. They're veterans. They've been here and done that. And so, again, I think that's one of the huge advantages that you give to the Chiefs.
You've got an entire career based in coaching, Jeff. You've been around many individuals, many groups of players. When you go through a season like the Kansas City Chiefs have, when you've overcome adversity, you've managed to shut out the outside noise, does that forge a tighter, a greater bond? Does it make you a better team?
Well, I think it could do 2 things. Number one, it can tear you apart because the opportunity is there. And we saw some frustration out of Mahomes early, where he was, their receiving corps led the league in drop passes. And that's not.
Well, look at that game at the beginning of December against the Buffalo Bills. The frustration spilled over. He's slamming his helmet down on the sideline. You just don't see that from Patrick Mahomes. And at that point, the national media around America was saying, look, they're falling apart. And yet they've managed to turn it around.
Well, I think that's indicative of when you've been super successful and when you've been the big dog on the block, if you will. I mean, the media wants you to fail. They want to tear you down. That's just the way it is. And I think that, again, much credit needs to go to Andy Reid for holding his team together, to Travis Kelce, to Patrick Mahomes, to Chris Jones, to all of the veterans on that football team that rallied around a group of wide receivers that were just getting vilified in the media. And they found a way to get it done. They went on the road, something everybody said they couldn't do in the playoffs because they had not played outside of Kansas City in the playoffs. They go on the road and they win in Buffalo. They go on the road and they win in Baltimore. 2 hard places to win against great quarterbacks. So I think the Chiefs are exactly what you want to be at this time. Hot and healthy.
And perhaps worryingly, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, I think what we saw in the postseason, particularly in Buffalo, was Travis Kelce, who seems to have lost a step, or at least that's what pundits in America have suggested. Well, against the Buffalo Bills, that Mahomes-Kelsey connection was as strong as ever.
Yeah, and Richard, that's the most productive quarterback receiver combination in the history of the National Football League in playoff football. And they've done it in a 6-year span, something that even Tom Brady and Gronkowski couldn't do. So this is the best combination we've ever seen in playoff football. They seem to understand almost telepathically where they're going to be on the field at the biggest moments in the biggest games. Andy Reid is an outstanding play caller and play designer. There were plays against Buffalo where he was able to put Kelsey in the backfield, where Buffalo had never seen him, and match him up against A.J. Klein, and that's not a fair fight. And every single game, when they need a big play, you saw it in Baltimore the next week, Kelsey seems to find a way to make a big play.
I once put one more name to you for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. That name is of running back Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th-round pick himself in 2022. How big is he going to be in this game? Because we saw it against the Baltimore Ravens that the running game for the Chiefs wasn't great. It was only about 2.5 yards per carry, but Andy Reid stuck with Isaiah Pacheco, kept it going, and it was effective in the end.
Well, I think the biggest thing with Pacheco is he brings a physical toughness to the run game that Kansas City really needs. Kansas City has the reputation of being a finesse football team, but Pacheco adds a hardness to their run game that they really need. He's great in the red zone. He's great in the tight red zone right down around the goal line. If they need, to pick up 3 yards on a 3rd down, he's a guy that you can just hand the ball on his own play and he can make those plays. The kid came out of Rutgers, again, one of the guys that was just at the end of the draft, a guy that everybody kind of overlooked. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he kind of creates a mystique about Kansas City that they have not had, and that's a physical toughness in the run game.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk defense, special teams, and give you our takes ahead of the big game on Sunday afternoon here in Las Vegas. Don't go away. Welcome back to Graves on Gridiron. This is your Super Bowl 58 preview show. Let's turn our attention, Jeff, to the defensive side of the ball, because these are the two of the best defenses in the NFL right now. All season long, the San Francisco 49ers have been revered defensively. Their linebacking core in particular, the likes of Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, not least they're physical, but they can carry receivers downfield.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big key. Now, how the 49ers choose to use those two guys is going to really be interesting to me. This is not a team that likes to play much man-to-man. And I think if you're going to stop Travis Kelce or limit Travis Kelce, because I don't know if you can stop him, you're going to have to get into some man-to-man defense. And Fred Warner has the physical structure to be able to handle Kelce. He's long like Kelce is. He runs better than Kelce does. He's more physical than Kelce is. So I think that matchup of Warner against Kelce is going to be critical. And then again, what Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator from San Francisco, chooses to do structurally. They have been average at best against the run. Yeah. Now, will Kansas City, give Pacheco 20 or 25 touches? We'll see. But they have struggled to stop the run. They went out and got Chase Young from Washington about halfway through the season, and everybody thought that was going to be a big addition for him. He has been a disappointment so far. Yeah. He's my dark horse, though, for having a great game in this game. We've shown in his career that he can do it. He's opposite Nick Bosa, the reigning MVP on defense in the league. So he's going to get his chances to get to the quarterback. And I think Chase Young's going to have a big day.
To that point, in regards to stopping the run, during the regular season, this is a top 5 run defense of the San Francisco 49ers, giving up just a fraction under 90 yards a game on the ground. In the 2 playoff games, they've given up a combined total of 318 yards on the ground. That's the most any team that's got to the Super Bowl has given up since way back in 1971 when the Miami Dolphins were in that region. If the Kansas City Chiefs decide to run the ball early and often with Isaiah Pacheco, obviously they're going to use Travis Kelce. What do you do about Patrick Mahomes? Because he's rushed for 23 first downs this year, and go back 12 months to the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. 3rd quarter, it's 3rd and long, and he rips off a 26-yard run on the ground to get a first down. He's not an obvious running quarterback, but he does make plays with his legs.
No question. And Everybody talks about how he can throw with his, these crazy arm angles, and his feet are all messed up, and he's throwing off his back foot, and all of the things he can do because he has such great arm talent. But what gets overlooked in all of that is how he can keep plays alive with his feet and make throws downfield, and also how he can get out of the pocket, which you allude to, and make first downs, particularly on third down. And I think that's one of the things that, again, that's one of the pressure points that the 49ers are going to have to deal with. How are they going to handle it? Are you going to put Dre Greenlaw on him as a spy? That may be what Steve Wilks pulls out of his bag of tricks on game day to slow down this Kansas City attack.
Well, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs defense. One of the best units in the NFL this season. Finished the regular season ranked number 2 in overall defense and the second best team when it comes to sacking opposing quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, we've already spoken about him, a young quarterback. Is the key to this game that front four for the Kansas City Chiefs getting pressure with 4 on Brock Purdy?
I think so, and I think they need to not only sack him, they need to hit him, and they need to hurry him. They need to get him off his spot and make him throw. He does not have a big, strong arm. So for him to throw the ball particularly well down the field, he has to be able to set his feet and throw. So I look for Chris Jones and George Karlaftis in that front, which you mentioned is outstanding, to try and disrupt him as much as they possibly can. Now, when you look at this Chiefs defense, how has Steve Spagnuolo been able to do such a great job with these guys? Well, it starts in the back end because L'Jarius Sneed, for my money, is the best corner in the league right now.
Sure.
Trent McDuffie is a young kid that nobody talks about that has incredible coverage skills. So those two guys are going to have to match up against Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. And, all year long, L'Jarius has taken the best player on the other side and really he's the human eraser. He just takes guys out of the game. I think that's going to be really, really key as we go forward into the game. And Steve Spagnuolo, and again, we're all big fans of guys that have been through NFL Europe because of our background. But Steve Spagnuolo, who cut his coaching teeth in NFL Europe, if you picked an MVP for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, it would not be a guy with a helmet, not Patrick Mahomes, not Travis Kelce. It would be Steve Spagnuolo because he has done an unbelievably good job with a defensive unit that is talented, but not a team that, has star power on defense.
Yeah, and don't take that from us. Take that from the players themselves. For Patrick Mahomes to turn around late in the season and say, look, guys, yes, we've struggled on offense, but we recognize the defense is the best unit on this team. And he said flat out to the media, I understand if I do not turn the ball over, our defense will win us games. And for somebody of his stature, given the type of team the Kansas City Chiefs have been over the last 5 years, to come out and say that speaks volumes to the mindset within the organization, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that is where Andy Reid has done such a great job. When you are a superstar like Patrick Mahomes is, and he is the superstar in our league right now, the face of the National Football League, and you are resigned, I guess is the only way I can say it, to being a guy that may complete 150 yards worth of passes, and you can still win a Super Bowl, and you don't complain about it.
Yeah.
You embrace it. I think that's a really, really good sign that Patrick Mahomes has matured as a quarterback.
I recall one of the greatest spells in the last 2 decades, obviously New England Patriots with all their success, and Tom Brady walking into Robert Kraft's office one day, and I asked him, what's the secret to the success here? And he said, simply, you check your ego at the door. There's no room for egos. And to hear Mahomes say what he did at the back end of the season suggests that philosophy is being implemented in Kansas City.
Yeah, and how can you have a big ego if you're another player on the team if the face of the National Football League is willing to put his ego aside and his statistics aside and his agenda aside to just endorse team football?
We've spoken about offense, we've spoken about defense. There's 3 phases to this game. We always say it, Jeff, when we talk about the National Football League. This is your forte, special teams. Mm-hmm. How significant a role could they play in this? You look at some previous Super Bowls. I remember the New Orleans Saints having an onside kick to start the second half, recovering it. That changed the momentum of the game. Ray McLeod for the San Francisco 49ers is one man that stands out, not just for his kick return ability for them in this game, but you look back at his history when he was in Buffalo last year, they used him on the scout team to simulate mobile quarterbacks. I've got to believe that in the build-up to this game, with Patrick Mahomes in mind, Ray McLeod's done something similar this week.
Well, I think it's going to really be interesting because, you know, Dave Tove, the special teams coach for Kansas City, is renowned as one of the best in the league. One of the areas where San Francisco has struggled is in kick coverage. So what will Kansas City do to try and take advantage of that? How is Kansas City going to nullify a great returner on the other side of the field? These are the things that nobody really talks about going into a game except the football people, because football was, is, and always will be a game of field position. It's territory acquisition, if you will. And so how do you create hidden yardage? How do you create hidden offense? Well, you do it in your return game. And how do you create a long field and help your defense? You do it with your coverage team. So obviously special teams play and the kicking and punting in this game is going to be vital. It's great. It's an indoor stadium, so we should see, you know, really good. Butker and all of the kickers and punters in this game should have outstanding days.
In the history of the Super Bowl, we've only ever seen a kick taken back to the house once. Devin Hester for the Chicago Bears against the Indianapolis Colts, 2006, if memory serves me right. Do we see that tomorrow?
Well, I think there's a possibility of it because, you know, in these kinds of games, those plays become magnified. And, you know, on the biggest stage, and you mentioned Ray McLeod, on the biggest stage, the big-time players come out to play.
Absolutely. Okay, let's bring this preview show to a close. Time to give the folks back home watching and listening, Jeff, your take on the game. The San Francisco 49ers start out as narrow favorites going into it. Flip the side, Patrick Mahomes. What has he not achieved? In 6 years as a starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, there's only ever been 12 games where the Chiefs have gone into those games and he's playing as underdogs. In those 12 games, he has a 9-3 record. It's phenomenal. Which way are you leaning going into Super Bowl 58?
You know, if you just go with your logical brain, you're going to say, okay, the best roster in this game is the San Francisco 49ers. They've got the best tight end in football in George Kittle. They've got the best left tackle in football. They've got the best fullback in football, the best running back in football, two of the best receivers in football. You know, again, the reigning defensive MVP, one of the top linebackers in football. You can go position by position and you'd say, this is going to be a 10-point San Francisco win. But the guys who work the sports books in this town are renowned at handicapping games, and they make it a 1-point game, which means it's the margin.
Flip of a coin.
Absolutely. I can't, Richard. I just can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. You know, from covering this game for years, that the position of quarterback is like no other in sport. It's the only. In a championship environment, it's the only position that touches the ball every play. And so Patrick Mahomes is going to get 65 opportunities in this game, roughly, to affect the game. And I like that, and I like the fact that this Kansas City Chiefs team has been there, done that. So I think it's going to be an incredible football game, and I'm going to give the Chiefs a slight edge.
In all the years we've known each other, Jeff, you've told me this game is a show-me game. Yep. So when I look at this matchup, I want to see which team has shown me they can do it in the past. And for all the naysayers of the course of the year, for all those that say that the Chiefs' offense is broken, for all those that say the Chiefs aren't what they were and the 49ers are now the most talented team, the better team man for man, it's the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes that have shown me. You look at both the Super Bowl wins that they've had over the last 5 years. Down double digits to the 49ers in Super Bowl 54. You had a quarterback last year in Patrick Mahomes that we were led to believe was running around on one leg and yet still made game-changing plays in it. They find a way to get it done. And just look at the postseason. You go on the road to Buffalo and the atmosphere and the weather and all that entails. Then you go on the road to the #1 ranked team in the AFC, to Baltimore, when they're bringing out all the past stars, the Super Bowl winners. The place is electric. And they shut down the Baltimore Ravens. I think there's a psychological thing that the 49ers have got to get over here. And when you look across that field and you see Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Chiefs on the other sideline, I haven't been shown yet that the San Francisco 49ers can get over that barrier. So I'm going to take the Chiefs as well. I think this is where we see a dynasty before our eyes and they etch their names in history. I'm taking the Chiefs. It's going to be a great game, whichever way you shape it up. I hope you can watch it. Hope you can join Jeff as well. You're on Talk Sport, play-by-play for the game. Your first time as a color analyst?
On radio, and that'll be fun. I think it's going to be fun because I think you get a little bit more time, a little bit more opportunity to, kind of peel back the onion for the fans that are listening on the radio. And again, I look forward to doing that. Richard, what a great show, and I appreciate, all you do with promoting our great game and covering another Super Bowl with you. What can be better than that?
And they say this is a job. You've got to be kidding me. Jeff and I are going to be back following the Super Bowl to give you our take on the events that take place in that stadium behind us on Sunday afternoon. Who will be lifting the Lombardi Trophy? We're almost there. We're going to find out soon. If you need some more build-up ahead of the game, go to my YouTube channel, @RichardGravesTV. We've got a ton of interviews with players, coaching staff, former players, analysts, all got throughout this week, all have their own takes on how this game's going to pan out. But for now, enjoy the game. So long, everybody.